if that's okay with you. We know we said 7:30, but I see some people still coming in, and once we get started, I wouldn't want anyone to be interrupted. Thank you.
All wet. I wonder why.
We're gonna start.
We're all washed up, is that it? I hope not. I think I'm good for another 6 months. Or longer. Well, you know what they say, things are great, and then suddenly, often, well, that's the way to go. That's the ideal way to go. I dread having to be in a nursing home and not be able to get out of bed and whatnot. I'd be very happy to have a good meal with friends and go to bed and then not get up the next morning. But I'm in no rush. I'm in no rush. That's the ideal way to die. Well, good for her. But she's
okay, are we ready? Thank you. Good evening, distinguished panelists, elected official Howard Rose, thank you for joining us. Our neighbors and friends, welcome. My name is Alexandra Soriano Taveras, and I am the chairperson of the Teaneck Democratic Municipal Committee, and it is my privilege and my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the TDMC. Welcome tonight. We are delighted to have you with us on this very wet evening to participate in our first development forum, Teaneck into the 2020s. Your presence here tonight demonstrates the importance of this topic and your commitment to the future of our town. Our goal this evening is to leave here with a better understanding of what is happening in Teaneck, how development impacts our suburban town, and what our role is in this process. Our distinguished panelists will be able to provide information regarding the following. Is development good for Teaneck? What are the benefits to the community and to its residents? What is currently being developed? What is the process for new development? What is your role, what is our role in this process? And can we influence development in our town? And how do we do that? Now, before I hand the microphone over to our moderators, I would like to recognize the hard work of our Action Committee who organized this forum in such a short time. Our Action Subcommittee Chair, Henry Frisch, and Shelley Frisch, Victoria Fisher, thank you, yes, you can, please. Cheryl Hall, Josh Spears, Ina Gersberg, Art Batsky, Bill Orr, Jonathan Ross, Ron Schwartz, and our Action Subcommittee collaborated with members of our Public Relations Subcommittee, Michelle Bivens, Cheryl Hall once again, very busy, Ina Gersberg, once again, very busy. Thank you. The committee appreciates and acknowledges the hard work that you put into getting this event together. And now I'm honored to introduce our moderators for the evening, Cheryl Hall, who's representative of District 16, and Joshua Spears, who is our representative for District 15. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a packed crowd, which is wonderful on this awful evening of rain. I just wanted to set down a few ground rules. We're going to allow clapping after the first 45 minutes or so when all the panelists give their short answers to the questions. The questions are in your pamphlet here on page, on the first page, outlined in red, focus questions, so you can look at that. During this time, if you have questions for the panel, we are taking written questions. There's index cards and pencils over there. You can give them to Henry or Victoria right here. Henry, okay, he's standing up. And put your name at the top if you want to be recognized. Depending on how the time goes, maybe we can even give you the mic and give you your own question, okay? We've also asked that even if you hear something that you don't agree with or you don't like, please do not jeer or make those kinds of responses. This is a wonderful event, and the reason that we're able to get everyone is because we want to engage in a good discourse, but very respectful of each other. So I would ask you to do that, and we'll hold the applause the first time till after all the panelists speak. And now I'll give it to Josh, and we're going to introduce everyone.
Okay, I have all the panelists introduce themselves, starting with Alan Sohn.
Alan Sohn, former council member, lived here for 25 years with my wife, raised 4 children, now have 3 grandchildren. I was active before I served in office, I was active when I served in office, and I hope to continue going forward serving this township.
Hi, Teresa Edwards. I'm a 25-year-plus resident. My daughter was born at Holy Name Hospital and grew up here and still lives here. and she is a teacher, so I still have a bit of a cold that I picked up from her, so I apologize if my voice is not always clear. I belong to a number of different organizations here in town. Most of them deal with children. And I just want to make one little correction on the flyer here. It says I'm a member of the an advisory board. I'm a former member of the advisory board of community relations, but not currently.
Hi, I'm Henry Pruitt. I've served on a number of boards in the township, including the Board of Ed and the council. And I see myself as a concerned citizen about the zone, and we'll talk about that later on.
Hi, I'm Jordan Zaretsky. I'm a fire chief, 25-year vet of the fire department, and a year and a half now as a chief.
Mark Schwartz, Deputy Mayor, Teaneck, resident, property owner for 24 years, along with my wife and 4 children. Additionally, ambulance corps member for 17 years and volunteer firefighter in the neighboring town for 21 years.
I'm Andy Rudin, the captain of the Teaneck ambulance. Been a member of the ambulance corps for 17 years and currently serve my 3rd term as captain.
Thank you to our panelists. Now let's get down to the business of answering questions.
Okay, there was one important thing I forgot for our panelists. Gina, right here, will give you a warning for this first part when you reach 5 minutes, okay? We're trying to cut it to 6 minutes total. So when you reach 5 minutes...
So 1 minute. Would you like that?
Yeah, 1 minute. After 5, then they have 1 minute left. Okay, and the second half, it'll be 30 seconds left because those are only 3-minute answers. Okay, I think Victoria wanted me to announce again for the index cards. If you have a question. Oh, silence all of your cell phones. I just went in and did that on mine, okay? And I guess that's it. Thank you.
You have the honor of being first.
I want to thank Alexander Soriano Tavares and again all the members of the TBMC. I want to thank our moderators, Cheryl, Josh, and again everybody for showing up. This is an unbelievable important opportunity for us to share and express and exercise our opportunity to share in participatory democracy here in our township. In terms of development, is development good? Of course development is good. The last thing we want is a static township that is just decaying in place. But there's nothing better that describes how we should be looking at development than what it says in our 2007 master plan. The conclusion says, the overarching goal of the master plan is to move forward while respecting and recognizing that all change is not bad and all growth is not good. What we need is a council, land use boards, a community as a whole that has the wisdom to distinguish between the development that is good and the development that is not. The best way to move forward is with planned development, based on a master plan developed with community consensus, and that is unequivocally good. A master plan is intended to serve as a guide, a roadmap for how we should be developing. Where are residential uses? Where are commercial uses? Most of us don't live next to a gas station. Most of us would not want to live next to a gas station. Most of us can count on a master plan that says commercial uses are in certain parts of this township, residential uses are in other parts of this township. We also have goals and objectives that are part of the legal, ethical, and moral obligations we have to provide affordable housing. To that end, this township has committed with Fair Share Housing to provide 535 housing units, affordable housing units, across this township. And we should be sharing this burden across this township. In order to provide 535 units, we will need about 3,600 apartments, where 15% of those are set aside as affordable housing units. They should not all be placed in one specific part of the township. One of the best ways to move forward with that master plan is to look at some of the goals and objectives that are stated within. Some of the goals are to invigorate our business districts and to bring economic vitality to all of our business districts, whether it's Cedar Lane, Teaneck Road, DeGraw, Fort Lee Road. And we have those opportunities to do that by bringing again what our master plan describes, mid-rise mixed-use development, where people are living on top in apartments above retail, where they can go downstairs and go shopping. We had an opportunity to do that at the Verizon building at 1500 Teaneck Road, and there will be no retail in that building. We had an opportunity to connect, to provide one of those missing links between the stores at the Walgreens Shopping Center and the stores that continue north, starting in Amsterdam. And we've lost that opportunity. Providing for a Teaneck Road streetscape is an element that can help bring economic vitality, but it is not sufficient to provide that. We need to be bringing people to Teaneck Road who will live there, who will shop there. We need to be bringing people to Cedar Lane who will live there and shop there. And just look at both of those streets and look at what we're doing in bringing that economic vitality to our township. We need to foster development here in Teaneck. We can see the ways to do that correctly going forward, and we can see the wrong ways to do that. And I think one of those best or worst examples, depending on how you want to look at it, is the proposed self-storage facility on Route 4, which was basically placed and spot zoned into our master plan. Let's foster mid-rise, mixed-use development across this township, the kind that will bring new residents and new vitality to our business districts. Let's bring residents and added vitality and build a Teaneck that we can afford and where we all want to live. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming in.
I hope you don't mind, I'm not going to stand. I agree with almost everything Alan said. I am not going to reiterate it, but the part that I focus on the most is where he said sharing across the town. That is vitally important, particularly for me, and I know several of the people in the audience that live in the Northeast that have seen an already explosive growth with apparently much more possibly on the horizon. If everything that is out there that is currently proposed were to come online, it would be approximately a little over 2% increase to the entire population of Teaneck, but it would all be situated within a half-mile region. That's a problem. I remember several years ago, back during the teacher contract negotiation, the buzzword of the day was shared sacrifice. And I don't see that happening right now. Again, I do believe that there does need to be development in Teaneck. You do not want your community to become stagnant. You do not want vacant buildings to decay and start falling apart around. You don't want roofs collapsing in. You need to keep on top of this, but you need to do that with proper planning. You need to do that with input from the community. Someone at the recent Board of Adjustment meeting asked a question of why would a developer come to Teaneck when he faces such hostility? I think the better question to ask would be, why do developers come with proposals that the area that they want to put it in is clearly not zoned for? Why would a developer come in and ask for a property to be 750% above what it is zoned for, unless he had a reasonable expectation of that being passed? So it seems to be that the word is out on Teaneck that you can get these kind of properties done. There's nothing wrong with the proposed property. It's quite suitable for other locations, not for Teaneck. If we want to remain a reasonably suburban area and not become completely urbanized, we need to take a step back, examine what we're doing, and think about it, and really value the opinions of all residents when they indicate what it is they would like to see in their communities.
Okay. There are about 15 sites in Teaneck that are being considered for some kind of development. We've got to make sure the members of the planning board and the zoning board understand the master plan and their role and not give away all these variances that have been given away to some of the sites that have been planned. The difficulty here is that 7 of those sites are within a couple of blocks of each other. And we're coming from behind now to figure out how we're going to move all those people around. In the zone, I call it the zone, that's between West Englewood Avenue and Tryon Avenue, and Teaneck Road and Palisade Avenue, there were 91 housing units already. Some are 2 stories, some are 3 stories, some are 4 stories, and some are 5, and some may be 15. We've got to have people concerned about how this falls out and how it ends up. We know development is going to come to Teaneck, but we've got to make sure we have the right people making the decisions that affect the township. And I'll stop now.
I'm not a development expert, and I really don't have an opinion here. My job is to manage the fire department within our community. So whatever that community looks like, that's how I'll manage the fire department.
Thank you. I'll start by reading this. Teaneck today has about 43,000 people. I regret that many good people are moving out because they can't afford to keep their homes. We need high-rise apartments for those people and for the young couples. We could have townhouses or condominiums. That sounds like it was said last week. Thomas Costa, Mayor of Teaneck, 1966 to 1969. Next comment. Our children are educated, children are out of the house, mother and dad feel they don't need a 4-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house any longer, but they wanted to stay in our community and there was no residences for them, no apartments, nothing for them to move that was comparable to the area that they left. Matthew Feldman also said that decades ago. Teaneck is changing. Our 2007 master plan just started talking about change. Our 2017 updated plan, both of which I wrote with my planning board, talked about multifamily apartments, as did hundreds and hundreds of municipalities in New Jersey discussing multifamily apartment buildings. We'll continue to talk about that through the night, but a few other comments about multifamily, and obviously most people in this room know I am in favor of it. Benefits. For starters, the tax benefits are significant. We have not raised the Teaneck municipal tax for the last 5 years. This past year, we saw about 2 million, 1.6 million maybe, influx from new development. Open space. Everyone in this room is taxed on their assessment of their house for open space. The millions upon millions of new assessments on these apartment buildings will pay tens of thousands of dollars a year for open space. Business districts. There was a comment made about business districts. Bringing people to our business districts starts with bringing people to our business districts. Stores do not open first. They need to see the people. The people will then bring the business. There was a comment made, I think, Dr. Pruitt, about 91 housing units. The area in question, which is an extremely area of importance that we're doing quite a bit of talk about, as mentioned, was Palisades to State Street to Teaneck Road to West Englewood. That is an apartment district. I lived there for many years myself. Yes, many homes may be near that district, but that is an apartment district. Talking about 100 State Street, which has been a hot topic. 100 State Street is a building, is an area that is bordered by Terrace Circle in front, the Castle to the right, Ayers Court and Warhaven Court behind. It is in an apartment district. That I cannot think of any better place to put 60 more apartments than in an apartment district. I'll stop for now.
I'll just echo Chief Zaretsky. From the ambulance corps perspective, we respond to the calls that we are get dispatched to. We do appreciate the effort that has been made, at least in the new places that have gone up, that the elevators all fit the equipment that we need, and we have easy access to get in and out of the buildings to make our response times quicker and faster.
Thank you. Question number 2.
Well, we'll give a round of applause to everyone for and I think we can now start. They answered the questions generally that were in this pamphlet, but I think we have a lot of questions from the audience. Do you have those ready? Okay, so we'll take a minute to do that. And actually, I have a question, so I guess we'll ask mine first before we get everyone in there. This would be to the ambulance and fire safety. What are the needs in terms of increasing support for fire and safety and ambulance if we increase the population in the Northeast by 1,000 to 2,000 people in 1 year? When we need new equipment, hire more people, can you give an idea on what kind of needs we might have?
Chief, I'm gonna skip the board. Start with you, man.
So from the ambulance corps perspective, no one gets hired, period. We're 100% volunteer. We continue to look for new people and new volunteers all the time. Our volume has increased over the time, regardless of the extra people moving in. The population has gotten older, therefore our volume increases constantly. The new complexes that have gone up might throw us over 5,000 calls a year. And if that does, that would probably put us to be the only completely volunteer ambulance corps in the state that has that kind of volume, which we pride ourselves on. But again, I don't think that, I mean, there's nothing more than additional people that would be a need for us.
Thank you.
I'm going to do it without the mic. It feels constraining. So there's a couple answers to this question, right? Obviously, we've seen some development, and if you've heard me talk about it before, my message has been consistent. A larger building, especially a wood frame building, presents a different fire problem to us. Now, my bosses on the council won't like to hear me say it, but I'm a fire chief. So if you ask me would I need more people, yeah. The answer to that is absolutely, I could use more people all the time. What will new development mean? I'm not entirely certain. We are trying to structure our fire department so we can fight a bigger fire, right? That's the reality of having a bigger building. And what I've been saying is to fight a bigger fire, to make the analogy as simple as I can, I need a bigger hammer, right? And so we're in the process of developing that, right? And we're doing that as cost effectively as we can by having a lot of conversations with our neighbors across the river that way and across the border this way. And I think more broadly a restructuring of the fire service as a whole. We all have to have a bigger hammer. But you have to have that bigger hammer if you have one building or if you have 50 buildings. You still need the bigger hammer. You can't do the job with a little tactic. A bigger hammer means more capability to fight. If you have a larger building that is made of wood, right, that presents different problems than a smaller building made of wood. So the hammer that you have enables you to deal with that bigger fire capably. But if you have one of them, or if you have 100 of them, you still need the bigger hammer, right? And the truth is that we need the bigger hammer already because we have those bigger buildings, one. And there's bigger buildings in Hackensack and there's bigger buildings in England. So we're going to be called on to fight fires in those bigger buildings. We need the bigger hammer. That's what that's what we're tasked with. That's what our job is, right? From my point of view, it doesn't matter to me if we have 1 or 50 because it's very unlikely that I'm going to have 2 fires in these 2 buildings at the exact same time. And I'll joke around about it like I'm calling it sick that day, but I'm not. We'll do what we have to do. Is that helpful? Can I answer the question? If seeing a huge increase in residency, our run volume spikes, then I'm going to come to you guys and I'm going to say I'm going to need more people. Because if we have a huge spike in run volume, that's what will happen.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, this next question is from Cheyenne. Really she wanted someone to address the third question, what is the process for development approvals? And that's a really good question. Soup to nuts, how does a developer come to Teaneck? Where does the process start? When is the public notified? When does the council vote on it? And we'll take 3-minute answers. Who would like to take that question?
Maybe I can try the anti-microphone thing too.
Can you all hear him?
I'm aware
No.
of how development happened in the zone. Now the first, I'm not sure what the timing is, but there were 3 projects that came to the planning board and to the council that I participated in the discussion, and the community participated in the discussion. One was Avalon Bay. That was a butterfly museum, and I'm happy that it didn't turn into a factory. I went there today. It's going to be a nice place, and it's a little bit out of the way, so it may not be as in a congested zone like the other places are. You should go. It's interesting, and it's a nice place to go. The other one was 1500 Teaneck Road. 1500 Teaneck Road was a derelict telephone building which was a blight on the community. Lots of things could have happened there, but there was a lot of participation in terms of community. The community helped to make sure that there's no exit on Amsterdam Avenue. It kept the height down to the same height as another building on Teaneck Road, about 60 feet. It turns out that's going to be an interesting building. It has lots of amenities. That's 2. The third one is the old DPW on Teaneck Road. That's a derelict building too. And the objective here is to put a senior citizens development in that spot and try to get senior citizens from Teaneck to get in there. Those are the 3 that I participated in. The rest of the buildings went to the zoning board, and I'm not part of that participation, and we can talk about it another time.
Before you, can I just say something? Okay, I just want to read the question again, because I'm not sure I was clear on this. What is the process for development approvals? So if I'm a developer and I come to Teaneck and I want to build a building, where do I start? What's the process?
So it seems to be a pretty factual-based question. I usually turn to Alan Stone, who can probably quote the laws and the facts. Just for starters, I just want to point out that I just mentioned this, and I'm going to mention it again, that if and when that senior citizen building opens up on Teaneck Road, I hope we can name it after our long time and a lifelong Teaneck advocate and leader, Henry Pruitt. So I make that announcement publicly as well.
I'm in trouble now.
And I'll try to give the dull answer to this question. If someone goes ahead and purchases land, say 140 State Street, which would be the abandoned gas station at the corner of State Street and Queen Anne Road, that would be the southeast corner. What would then happen was they would purchase it, they would close on the purchase it, or they would be in contract with the seller. They would bring their plans to the town, say to build a 5-story building. The plans would get denied because it doesn't fit the zoning, which at that point was a gas station. They would then file they would file for a variance, which would either go to the planning board or the board of adjustment, depending on various criteria. It would go to one of the boards. We'll skip the merits of which particular board. That board would then go through the requirements and the variances. The building department would go through the variances. They would notify the neighbors in the surrounding area, and they would make the presentation to the planning board. Hi, we want to build a 4-story building, to which in 2009 or so they presented. The planning board came back and said, we'll give you approximately 35 or so units with a bank on the first floor, with a drive-through or some entrance there on Queen Anne Road, but we also want their 3rd and 4th floor set back. These are part of the back and forth that takes place over the years with the planning board. The planning board approved that, it wasn't built. They then came again to another plan, and that was sent to the Board of Adjustment for various reasons why it goes to one and the other. And they presented a building with about 50 or so units and 2 stories of parking garage below, which also was approved. Subsequently, the building was knocked down. They started digging. They found that they hit water, and they could not complete the building as proposed, though now I'm hearing that they could not complete the building as proposed because the cost to build with the water was significant. Not that they couldn't build it, but to build it because of the water would not pencil out. That's the short version. There's other versions of you come to the town if there was a zoning change. So 1500 Teaneck Road had approximately 7 or so meetings between the council, back to the planning board, back to the council, back to the planning board, until it was unanimously approved for a development of 232 units.
Thank you, Councilman Schwartz.
Would anyone else?
Question or comment?
You need to get a index card and then you can write it down.
So just to break down the detail, just to refine it a little bit. The first thing, once somebody buys a property, is you have come up with a plan, you're going to look at the master plan, you're going to take your plan to the zoning officer in the building department. Dan Melfi is going to look at it, and in almost 0% of those circumstances, the zoning officer is going to say, everything is fine. You fit within our master plan, you fit within our zoning ordinance. The problem is that in huge percentages of where developers are even going to think about developing, a lot of what we have there is just not working. Developing a project that's 35 feet high limits a building to 3 stories. 12 units per acre is the standard zoning in many of our zones. So basically now you have 2 choices given that it doesn't fit. You can either try to change that zoning by going through the planning board. The planning board can also grant waivers to allow a building to go ahead. But if that zoning is changed, as was described for 1500 Teaneck Road, for some of the other projects that we've gone forward, we can change that zoning. The other process, which is the example that 100 State Street is going through, is to say we recognize that there are 12 factors where we do not fit, including asking for 68 units in an area that is zoned to fit 9 on that property, asking to build a building that is 86 feet high in a zone that permits 35 feet. And basically you're asking and offering their set of circumstances. There's an opportunity for those residents who live within 200 feet. There's an opportunity for all residents to speak to this, but you're getting those things changed, an exemption, a variance from the rules that apply to everybody else. I've seen many decisions where homeowners are asking for 0.1% of extra lot coverage, a building that's 6 inches or a foot too wide or too tall. And they're given a very strict form of justice from the Board of Adjustment. I see developers come in and I see an effort to bend over backwards. And we need to strike a balance to serve the residents who are asking their requests, making reasonable requests for modifications to go above and beyond. We need to be looking to our developers and saying that they too should be expected to largely comply with our zoning, what we've developed. And where that doesn't work, we should be making changes and we should be thinking about how we go through that. And I think it's that process of making those decisions and who is making those decisions. Are you represented on those land use boards? Are you represented on the Board of Adjustment? Are you represented on the Planning Board? And we should have diverse members of our community making those decisions on behalf of all of us residents.
Thank you. Now, the next question here deals with the schools. What, if any, impact will this development increase development and increase our schools? Are we ready for it? Now, due to the fact that we don't exactly have a representative from the school board here, but there are several board members in the audience, I will ask the panelists, and any of you want to address this, then I will turn it over to one of the school board members.
I'll just address it very briefly in that at the last meeting they indicated that there will only be about 6 children in the building who would be attending the schools. That's a very limited answer because even if that were true and verifiable, if there are any families who choose to send their children to private school, then the district is responsible for transporting the children to there. So it doesn't have to be children who actually physically attend the public schools to have an impact on the public school budget and finances. And that is something that is mandated, so there is no way around it. I believe that Dr. Irving has concluded his impact study, but I will let one of the board members address that. So, but when you think about new development, just don't think about the children who are attending the public schools, because there are many who attend either religious schools or charter schools or any one of a number of things, art schools, technical schools, Bergen academies, and that does, even though they are not physically attending the school buildings, it does have an impact on the school budget.
Thank you, Teresa. Mark?
Yes, that budget report came out, so I'm not going to comment on that because there are some board members here. But I will comment on the busing comment, which is a very good comment. When a child moves into a building, if he goes to private school, they do not hire a new bus for that child. There is plenty of existing seats on buses, so if there's a stop, and there's people come on the bus. If that bus is sold out, they may have to give you a voucher check, which Teaneck and New Milford does, Bergenfield does not, of about $820, and I'm going to be off by a few dollars. So, yes, there are private school kids that will move into this development. Yes, some of those private schools students may go on a bus, but those private schools will be sitting on existing seats, or at worst case, a check for $800. Using that $800 number, 1475 Palisades Avenue, which has 125 units, has a tax bill this year of $680,000. So if there's 6 or 7 kids in that, and the school board members will talk about that, the $800 voucher, the $800. If there's not even a seat available, we still make about $679,000 on that.
Ms. Victoria Fisher, who is a present school board member.
Hi family, and I'll just recognize our fellow school board members who are in attendance, Howard Rose, Denise Sanders, and our former Board of Education members, Javon Romney Rice, Margot Emery Fisher, Barbara Ostra, and Janet Abbott, one of my favorites. One of my favorites. And I'm sorry? Sandy Law. And Sandy Law, hi, welcome back. Oh, and Sarah Rappaport, here's the current member. So, Gerald Reimer, thank you. There's a lot of us here, we have a quorum. So I'll say that we did do an impact, and the information we got was that there would be an expected 150 students. I'll say personally, I think that's a really conservative estimate because they assumed that only families in 2-bedroom or larger apartments would have children or school-age children. And for any of us who came to Teaneck to become part of the middle class and part of suburban culture, I think we remember having several folks in 1-bedroom apartments until we could afford to move out or move up. So let's just say it's 150 students, and if it keeps up at the same rate that we have for our other students, you're obviously looking at 150 students distributed across our 13 or 14 grades if you're counting pre-K. It's not substantial. But when you factor in other costs, and I know the councilman is a single issue with our public education system for the busing, that's a tiny piece of it. The biggest pieces are special education costs, and if they keep up at the same rate that more than 30% of our students receive special education services, some with devastating needs, and others with minor needs that hopefully get the services and grow out of it. Let's conservatively estimate that at 50 kids, at $50,000, a conservative estimate to provide them all the resources that they need. You're looking at a $2.5 million burden just based on the current approved projects.
Can I just qualify with my answers a little bit? I just want to say, because it was so long ago it escaped my mind, when you are a resident and you choose not to send your children to the public schools, as I did in the beginning of my child's academic career, you do have the option, if you so choose, of not accepting a bus or accepting a check. When my daughter attended private school in Teaneck, I did not request a bus and I did not take a check from the district, because once I decided not to use the public school that was a stone's throw from my house, I felt it was the school's responsibility to educate her. It was my responsibility to get her there. So it does have an impact on the school, but it doesn't have to. It is the resident's choice.
Thank you, Teresa. Before I go to the next question, is there any other school board members that would like to address that? Mr. Ryan?
Yes. Good evening. Excuse me, in my wildest dreams, I didn't think I was going to be speaking tonight, so I apologize if I fumble. I just want to say is that anything I say is obviously my opinion and not that of the entire board. One of the things is that when it comes to this study is that, just to clarify, the study that was done by the district was based on available data that was based on some of the developments, but it was also based on the United States Census data. and the demographic studies around the state. It was actually done as a result of a requirement in the education statutes, Title 6A. Excuse me, I don't know the exact one. I hope that the school district does post it on the district so you can see it. It did say an impact of about 150 students, of course, separated amongst the various grades. And that's really what it comes down to, is that there's a lot of conversation sometimes when it comes to schools also about kids who are maybe attending who don't belong in the schools. And the thought that if you take that one student out, you automatically save $20 or $30 or $40,000, it just isn't true. What has to happen in order to really impact the cost of the school is that there has to be a significant concentration across individual school districts or individual grades in order to mean that you need additional staffing or something like that. The teachers are still there. Also, when it comes to busing, the busing isn't just a blank check. When you offer courtesy busing, it is a choice that the district does. We do in order to embrace the diversity of Teaneck. And in doing so, the statutory requirements, they limit that check. That check can be no more than $1,000. And when you spread that over 9 months, it's really not a lot of money. It's not like an entitlement, it's just an opportunity to get reimbursed for part of that busing scenario. And then the school district also helps bid those districts, those bus routes, in order to save costs and everything like that. So it's not everything is cut and dry, obviously. We don't know until people actually move in. But the data that we're being shown, it doesn't look like a significant impact right now, at least specific to the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
We have another school board. Oh, okay. Oh, can you just come a little closer?
Howard Rose.
Thank you. Very quickly, two things. First of all, we're mixing municipal and Board of Education money. When we talk about expenditures, the expenditures are for the Board of Education. And when we talk about tax dollars coming in general from development, it's really money that's coming into the municipal government. So it's really apples and oranges. In addition, I believe that it's a choice a parent makes as to whether or not they'll take a voucher or require the district to provide busing. So that can have an impact. The net result of the study that was done, at least as far as I've heard, is that for the future, we just don't know.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you. Those were very honest opinions. Okay, for our next question, I'm going to read it because it's directed at Mark, and I know he won't yell at me. Okay. Also, if you want your name, if you want to read your question, you need to just put your name somewhere on it, and then we can call you up. This says, Mr. Schwartz did not mention whether the property was tested for contamination, since it was the site of a former gas station. So I guess they're talking about the property on Queen Anne right here. Did the planning board or the advisory or the adjustment board of adjustment demand that the property be tested for contamination?
The simple answer to that that test is far above our pay grade. Many people know about the 7-Eleven that went up at the corner of River Road and Cedar Lane. Why wasn't that an apartment building? The cleanup needed to take out the gas station contaminants from that location is far greater if you're building residential as opposed to literally throwing on a cement pad and building a 7-Eleven. 1280 Teaneck Road, catty corners to the 7-Eleven and Sterling Cleaners, was a contaminated gas station for years. That was also approved to be a 6,000 square foot building. They're starting some groundwork now if people have driven by and seen. Also, they have cleanup requirements that the state mandates that they showed us, but we're not experts and even able to justify that. That has to go to a much higher authority to prove that they've cleaned it up. Whereas 1475 Palisades Avenue, that Hunter building that just opened up, that was a contaminated storage and oil truck storage and oil storage field for decades. That underwent cleanup for well over about 12 or 13 years before they were able to build. They felt that the cleanup required there was far beneficial it was cost effective to then build that building. So the cleanup that goes on all these sites is not the purview of the town, but that's not saying the town's saying, not our problem. It goes under the state, and the significant requirements, reporting and cleaning up that has to get done is significant. Maybe our state senator can discuss that, but it's really above what I can discuss as a council member.
Did anyone else want to comment on that question? Or? Okay.
So again, contamination has a cost. It needs to be addressed, it needs to be remediated. But the question is what should we be doing as a community to deal with it? 1475 Palisade Avenue went before the planning board, went before the Board of Adjustment and said that they needed added zoning, a much taller building to cover their cost of remediating the contamination, but never provide details on what that cost would be. We should be looking at helping provide an opportunity to make sure those sites are remediated and not just being left as unused contaminated sites. We have other sites where that's been an issue. The Haluba property along the railroad tracks adjoining Herrick Park is another site that has significant contamination, where when they were looking at the process of developing that site, they were asking for bonus zoning, again, never disclosing what would need to be remediated. Probably the worst site in terms of the amount of contamination that is being considered for redevelopment is 1600 River Road, the DPW site, which has probably every form of contamination. I don't know about nuclear, but there's probably everything else. There's asbestos, there's oil, there's lead, there's everything there. There's going to be a significant cost that needs to be done to that. And we need to find either an opportunity to say we're not doing anything residential there, as was described. Sometimes it just does not make sense. So let's just cap that, deal with the remediation, and put a DPW, or recognize that any effort to put a residential site on that location at 1600 River Road, the existing DPW site, will be an incredibly expensive job in order to be able to remediate that and to ensure that there's public access for residential buildings on that site.
Thank you. Okay, the next questions are directed at fire and safety. It said, Chief, you agreed with the panel consensus at Senator Weinberg's workshop on fire protection for wooden multifamily structures, that they should not be packed in closely to each other. Similarly, does a 70-unit structure, I think it's 68, 70-unit structure where they have 0 feet at the rear of the property line, which backs up against a similar structure, in your opinion, is that fire safety? And I have that question twice from 2 different people, so thank you.
I'll do that. Can you guys hear me if I just talk? I don't like. Go ahead. All right, so just so we're clear, the fire code is pretty specific in what it allows and what it doesn't allow. And Senator Weinberg put a program together, I guess 2 months ago now, where she was, I'm just trying to give us some framing here. What framing? Point framing. Where she's, I think, I don't want to speak for you. What's that?
I said I'm not helping you out.
Okay. I think what you were trying to do is help to change the fire code. And so her suggestion and our suggestion is that when we have these larger wood frame buildings, that they go to what's called a full 13 system, right? So if I get nothing else, but I get a full 13 system, in any building, really, and we don't have to limit it to the larger structures. Again, those present a different problem to me, but there's an awful lot of structures within Teaneck and within this area where we've modified the legacy home. So if you have a split or whatever, where you have a ranch home, and you put another level on it, in the last 20 years, it is likely that you used lightweight wood frame, right? And what that means is, and you've seen them, they're wooden I-beams, right? So instead of 2 by 12 dimensional lumber supporting your second floor or whatever part of the house you added on, you now have a wooden I-beam. So it's a flange, and then OSB. It's press board in between. And what that allows us to do is large open areas, right? And it's a nice look. The problem is, from a fire safety perspective, is that engineered lumber has no fire protection in it. The burn through in a 2x12, in other words, how long it takes for that 2x12 to fail, is 45 minutes, right? So all the buildings that were built in the 60s, built with 2x12 structures, takes 45 minutes before a section of that floor falls away. These newer buildings with this lightweight wood, the problem is that the burn through can be 5 minutes. And that's 5 minutes from fire attack, not 5 minutes from when we're aware of it, right? And the problem with that from a fire safety perspective is my men are usually walking in the door at 5 minutes, right? So, what I said at that forum, and what I'll say again, is the most important thing is a full 13 system. Full 13 in these newer structures means that the interior space is sprinkler protected. But not only that, so we can see we have sprinkler heads in here, so we had a fire in this space, we're sprinkler protected. We talk in the fire service about the void space. The void space is the space between the ceiling of one floor and the floor of the next floor. That void space where these normally 2x12s, but also this engineered lumber runs, if that is not sprinkle protected, you get a fire burning in that void space because you have recessed lighting, for example, that fails and gets too hot and it lights it off in there, right? Then we're not aware of that fire for too long. 5 minutes later, you can start to have ceiling and floor failure, right? That is why I believe that the most important thing we can do is a full 13 system, 1. 2, masonry egress pathways. So what that means is that when we build these larger structures, if it is a fire and it's gotten ahead of us, we need a place where the people who are in those buildings can egress, right? There's different ways to do that. You can put in firewalls, but a masonry, a thick concrete firewall where egress pathways, that gives me 2 things. 1, the people who are in that building can get out. 2, when my firefighting personnel go into that building, we have a place that we call a place of refuge, right? So things aren't going the way we wanted them to go. We go back to that masonry enclosure, we close the door, and we breathe for a minute, and we say, okay, how are we going to deal with this problem because it's not going the way we want, all right? So those are the 2 things that are really important to me. Access, here's the thing, and I guess it kind of relates to what we're talking about. And how does these process work? The only time the fire department ever gets a say in this process, we get what's called a site plan. Now this is a very unspecific thing that just basically lays out where the building is going to be and what access is, right? And so, for example, on 1500 Teaneck Road, we required a roadway around the back of that, based on the size of that building. Not 68, it's got a little bit more, and I'm concerned that there's literally no access. We were able to negotiate that in, right? What I appreciated about Senator Weinberg's piece is as follows. That we're trying to change the code, because when we go to negotiations on those site plans, we're negotiating with the builder and we say we want sprinklers, and we want masonry egress pathways, and we want access, if we deem that necessary in that site, right? The problem is that the code doesn't say those things. So the builder can just say to us at that point, no. Now both Avalon Bay and 1500 Teaneck Road voluntarily went full 13, which I'm very appreciative of, and they went masonry egress pathways. I haven't seen the site plan for 100, but I'm assuming they're going to be compliant there. And I understand that the builder or the occupancy behind it has taken down they used to have garage structures on the back lot there, and they took them down and they're putting in a flat parking lot, which I'm appreciative of. One of my guys happens to work part-time for that property owner, and he suggested it, and it kind of winds up as a win for us, because even though it doesn't sound like they're going to have access here, we'll have access there. So it's not something that we're allowed to, touch. The code doesn't require it. I love it, and we try and solve the problem, just like we try and manage any problem that comes up. That's how we're trying to manage it. Is that helpful? I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. And then, just as a demonstration of the effectiveness of sprinklers, I'll put in a little plug. On National Night Out, we won a grant for $1,000. Not a lot of money, but we're going to build 2 side-by-side burn rooms. And so they're going to be just an 8x10 room. One is going to have no sprinkler head in it, and the other is going to have a sprinkler head in it. And we're going to light them both on fire, which is like the big flashy thing. It's pretty cool. We'll do it National Night Out in Botee Park. One will have a sprinkler head in it, And if everything goes to plan, the sprinkler head will, essentially control the fire in the one that has the sprinkler head, and then we'll put the fire out in the other one. But it is, assuming it works well, it's a very effective demonstration of the effectiveness of sprinklers.
Thank you, Chief.
August 6th.
May I ask the Chief a question? I have a question for the Chief that I think we all may find interesting. Developer comes to us with a 5-story building. 5-story building, let's say Avalon Bay, could be logistic construction. But he says, give me 8 stories, and I'll build it, cement, sprinkler, voids, like 1475.
I'll take it.
You take?
I'll take it. You take it. So, slightly different hammer. So the question, he's saying if we don't build wood, if we build what we in the fire service refer to as a non-combustible building, right? Steel and concrete don't burn. They're more expensive. But it presents a slightly different problem for us. It presents a compartmentalized fire. But what's nice about it is once we get the people out, we can fight that fire in a predictable way, and we're not as concerned about the building falling out from under us in that case. So I'll take them. Yeah, concrete and steel. Yeah.
Anyone else? Alan?
So the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, has different regulations. 13 for basically non-residential, 13R for residential buildings. In residential buildings, you're not required to have sprinklers in closets, bathrooms, attic, and other interstitial spaces. And that has been a situation, and that was one of the situations in some of the Avalon fires outside of Teaneck, where buildings did carry forward. One of the issues is that there really is a gigantic difference in the costs of building using stick, basically out of wood, where you pretty much can go up to a maximum of 5 stories. A steel concrete building is not going to make economic sense much above 10 stories, 8 to 10 stories. I think 8 would be a bare minimum of where you're going to find economically justifiable. Remember, those bottom 5 stories that you could have built out of much cheaper wood now also need to be built out of steel and wood. I think out of steel and concrete. It is a tremendous positive that we are seeing more buildings built to the 13 standard, which includes sprinklers in those closets, in those attics, in those bathrooms, to prevent fires from spreading. That is a positive, but I think that we should all be advocating for stronger building standards that ensure that this is not something that is done at the graciousness of a developer, but that is something that is required by state law, and I applaud Senator Weinberg for her efforts to ensure that developers are required to build at a higher standard, not have to apply and again, graciously provide that benefit.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm sorry, I was asked earlier if we can ask everyone to put their phones down. I know we're using it maybe for timing, but if there's any texting, stuff like that on the panel, we'd like to just have your full attention.
Thank you. The next question is about housing. It's individual rights. I've lived in Teaneck most of my life. I've mentored kids locally. I was looking into an apartment out here, but unfortunately, the price point is beyond my resources. It seems like lately people are being forced out for new money. The wait list for fixed income is now closed. Will there be access to 1500 Teaneck Road wait list? If so, then when? Also, where can I find a copy of the master plan for Teaneck to read?
All right. The easy question is the master plan is on the internet. You can look it up. 2017 improvement is right there. Every building that's been up and put up lately has had a 10% set aside for low-income people. And I believe, Mark, if this is correct, any new building is going up to 15% set aside. Now, this is a problem in the sense that when you have 25 units like the one on Avalon Bay, that's moderately priced. It's open to 5 counties. So it makes it very difficult for Teaneck people to get in there, but you gotta work anyway, you gotta try it anyway. So there are 3 buildings now that I know are ready to be occupied. One is 1500 Teaneck Road, it's gonna come up pretty soon. The Avalon Bay building has opened the door for people, for residential, and 1475 Palisade Avenue. All 3 of them are accepting applications for low-income housing.
Do you want me to add that?
Yeah, go ahead.
And, sorry, I'll read it off my phone, because that's where my notes are. Just to go back, the developments coming up. Avalon Bay, the list was sold out, I guess would be the answer. They just had their lottery this past week. The next building that should be coming up would be 227 Teaneck Road. 227 Teaneck Road was approved for 24 units. I believe 3 of them are affordable. That building, if anyone's used it by Fort Lee Road across Catty Corner to Dairy Queen, they should be opening up about 2 months from now. The list will come out, but regrettably, it's only approximately 3 units. 1500 Teaneck Road will be accepting applications later in the year. It will start, it'll probably finish in early winter, and that should be for 24 affordable housing units. 764 New Bridge Road is under construction at the corner of New Bridge Road and River Road. That is 19 units. That was an old approved application. I believe there's only 1 affordable, or 2 affordable units. There's a few other developments that have been approved that are reading off the list. 1387 Hill Street is only a 7-unit building that was approved. I'm not sure if construction will be starting there. That I believe is 1 unit. In 890 Palisades Avenue, another 7-unit building that's affordable, has affordable units as well. And lastly, Cedar Lane, but it's not on my list, at the end of Cedar Lane, Hackensack. So we do have a lot of affordable units that are coming on, but we need hundreds and hundreds of more, as Mr. Sohn said. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, and the seniors have mentioned this in their forums, do we want to build or we don't want to build? So we need to build to get these affordable units, but that comes at an expense, and that expense is building. That's the answer we have to ask ourselves as a community. How much building do we want for that?
Mark, can you tell people where it'll be announced when the lotteries are?
Yes, it's a few things. 1, please sign up for the mailing lists. Everything, the emails, blasts go out with sometimes more information you never cared to know about. 2, on the website, we put it on the website as well. There's also some unofficial social media groups which have them. Is it this room or upstairs? It was this room, I believe, that we had the affordable housing seminar that we did, and we had a record crowd. It was outside. There was about 300 people. We'll have more of those later in the year, especially as we get closer with 1500 Teaneck Road, because there are dozens of units, and notifications will be going on about that. But please sign up for the emails. We have more people in this town on shopping list emails than we do on the township emails. I'm not sure if that's for me. I'm not authorized to take the question.
No, wait, can you hold the mic for a second? I just want to ask one question. All of those buildings that you listed, will all of the affordable units be in those buildings? Because aren't a couple of the affordable units from 1475 not actually on the property?
The answer is, that was 1475 being approved by the Board of Adjustment outside the council purview was done that way. Absolutely, that will not happen. That has not happened under our watch. It no longer will be allowed to happen. That not only does it have to be on site, it has to have full access to amenities and everything along those lines. So same thing with, you can't have 24 affordable housing units, so let me make them 1-bedroom apartments. I believe it's a state law that requires that it has to be a mix. And if those of you who are in attendance during the 1500 Teaneck Road approvals, the mix of there's more 3 bedrooms percentage-wise under the affordable housing than there is in the complex, based on the state rules that oversee the affordable housing in the rules. So I think the answer question is it will never be offset.
Okay, thank you.
I was here earlier this month in gym number 2 for the drawing for 25 affordable housing units. 5 1-bedroom, 15 2-bedroom, 5 3-bedrooms at 1500 Teaneck Road. The lottery closed April 30th for Avalon. That's for Avalon. That was for Avalon. There are 25 units. You'll be able to, the people who are participating there, who are drawn, would be able to see those starting in June. They will be available. There were 25 units made available. There were 3,212 applications submitted. You have about 1 in 150 chance of winning that. If you want another recommendation, Mega Millions is $444 million for Friday night. It's $2. You have a better chance of winning the prize in that lottery. Again, as was pointed out, this is not only open to Teaneck residents. In previous examples, again, based on the data that I have for 60 Bergen, 0 Teaneck residents were among the winners of that lottery. Everyone in a 5-county area is eligible to participate. If, based on that data, 5% of the 535 affordable housing units go to Teaneck residents, there will be 3,600 units built. There will be 535 affordable housing units. There will be 26 that go to Teaneck residents. Don't assume that if you're looking for a place to retire, that the affordable housing units that are being built are going to be your future way to take care of yourself and your family in an affordable housing unit. There are a tremendous number of people who live in Teaneck who want to be able to retire and to downsize in Teaneck. We need to be able to provide those services, but again, don't assume that affordable housing, again, there are limits of very low, moderate income. It's based on family size, based on the number of units you're looking for. Look at that. If you think you're eligible and you want to participate, absolutely make sure this is literally one of those, you have to be in it to win it in order to be even eligible. Even if you're picked, again, unlike the Mega Millions, they draw your numbers, you won. If you are in a housing lottery, your name is drawn, you are now eligible to be screened. You need to fill in and submit further detailed financial information that is going to be reviewed by Piazza and Associates, which represents the township. Then, once that is accepted, it will go to the developer, in this case Avalon Bay, who can evaluate your application using the same standards, credit, other application requirements that are applied to all other residents in that building. So even if you win the lottery, even if you're number 1, you are in no way, shape, or form guaranteed that you will be able to get an apartment. This is something that is a tremendous benefit. It is something that is a legal, ethical, moral responsibility that we have as a township, but it is in no way, shape, or form mean that there are going to be 535 worthy Teaneck families moving into those 535 affordable housing units.
This is a question for Mark, so pay attention. All of the units that are affordable are not the same. I was over at Avalon Bay today, and all the units that are affordable there are like all the other units in the building. But in some of the buildings in Teaneck, the affordable units are smaller. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
Now, Barbara, you know the answer to that.
Yes.
What's the answer?
Yes.
The answer is that they're not all the same. So some of them are affordable, but they're cheaper in a real sense. So it's not exactly a level playing field.
That's correct.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt. Next question. I do believe this is in regards to affordable housing, not just apartment applications, but it reads, who will be in charge of the processing of apartment applicants?
We hired Mr. Piazza, who's managing the affordable process in Teaneck, and I think that's going very well. But there is somebody who we can identify who's doing that, Mr. Piazza.
Anyone else?
And again, I want to thank Dr. Pruitt. Dr. Pruitt and I, Councilman Rice, who's standing in the back, really wanted to make sure that those affordable housing units were allocated fairly and objectively. That they weren't going to somebody's nephew or somebody's neighbor, that they were being done fairly. I was here at the drawing. Mr. Piazza went through in complete detail of what the process was for how the numbers were being selected. He went to a website, a random number generator, and basically drew the numbers, 3,212 numbers that could be assigned to each one. It's a transparent process while it goes through Piazza. Once you've made it through Piazza and Associates, who is being paid by the developer but is representing the township, then it goes to the developer. The developer is looking at that same application. The developer is then making decisions on which tenants will be selected from the top of the lottery, again, for those people who made it through Piazza, but then they are evaluating those applications based on their criteria.
Your Honor.
Okay, I have 6 cards here. Oops, I'm sorry, all of these cards are about the development in the plaza. So I will address some of the questions and you can answer them, and if I don't hear an answer, I'm going to ask you to readdress it. This first one, how will development pay for tax relief? We haven't seen anything yet. That's what someone said here. I want to also point out that, you know, we are one of the only towns that has to pay for their garbage. So we're asking, how does all this development create tax relief, create better quality of life for people here? And also, people are asking the CSX trains. What's the feedback on that? Is it a dangerous situation to have the apartments that close? They're right over the site. As you can see from our pamphlet, one of the buildings is a very large one that's being proposed, I guess, at this time. And they're all so close to the train. And we really can't get any clarity on that. And another person asked, why is all the development targeted in the northeast section? So right here, is that like a 2-mile radius? All the development is coming here, and why is that happening? So would someone like to address some of those questions? Good sport, thank you.
I guess we'll start with the trains. You're looking at 3 people over here that has probably spent a combined 1,000 nights living on the train tracks. Whether it be the ambulance corps, and there's many nights I've spent one room over from Andy sleeping there, and on the ambulance corps or the fire department. On top of that, Bergenfield, every town, we can go up and down where thousands of, probably millions of people in America live alongside railroad tracks. But looking at Teaneck, the charter school was put on the railroad tracks, the ambulance corps, the fire department. We can go into Bergenfield, up and down, things, schools, everything's built on the built on the railroad tracks. If someone has a problem with that, they do not have to live there. There's no force, no requirement. Nor do I know if I want to live there. I mean, there's some loud nights there on the ambulance corps. As it relates to, give me another question, was there was the affordable house, there was the State Street area, there was the train tracks, it was, what was right before the train tracks?
Northeast.
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 What was the first question before? The first question before the train, sorry.
Oh, tax relief.
Tax relief,
and
yes.
I mentioned that we're paying for our garbage.
Right, exactly. We'll talk about the tax relief and garbage at the same time. Tax relief. We actually are finally starting to see these numbers that we've been talking about for years. We talked about millions of dollars. The first benefits that came to town were the permit fees. And one day alone, we got about $400,000 in 2016 for permit fees for the hotel and for 1475 Teaneck Road. Permit fees have amounted to millions of dollars for these developments. We've seen that money. We've put that money to work. This current year, the budget that was just approved is the first time that we're now raising our spending. We're spending more this year, but we're not passing that along to the community. The reason is because we've increased our assessments. The hotel is now fully online with the property taxes as well as the room and occupancy tax that's charged. We have that coming in. What's not factored in that's going to come in for next year is the $680,000 for 1475 Palisades Avenue. Avalon, which hopes us to get their occupancy on June 15th, that'll also be approximately $1.1 million net of what we were getting from the vacant lot, so approximately $1 million. We're expecting that this year, and then the following year is 1500 Teaneck Road. That money is being put to work because we are not raising our tax rate for 5 straight years as a result. Garbages, I pay $35 a month for garbage. They come to the side of my house where all the raccoons are, they pull it out, they take it, they put it back. In my opinion, that's the best money ever spent. The town cannot do it for that cheap. If you want garbage picked up, you will pay for it. There will be new hires, there will be new pensions, there will be new health insurance, there will be new trucks. The town cannot do it for cheaper. That's called privatization, which is a newer word, but somehow that's been in Teaneck for decades upon decades upon decades. So, as always, Teaneck is at the foresight on doing things like that. As it relates to the Northeast, I believe that's the plaza business district. 100 State Street, as I mentioned before, is surrounded by apartment buildings. To say that these 60 units are coming to the northeast section of town, it's in an apartment district. We're putting that, it's surrounded already by apartment buildings. Avalon Bay, 248 units, is not in the northeast. The Newbridge and River Road is not in the northeast. The few others that were approved, Cedar Lane and Palisades, is not in the northeast. 1500 Teaneck Road is absolutely right on Teaneck Road in the northeast. And Dr. Pruitt set up community groups who met with the developers and made changes as a result, which is why that plan received unanimous approval by the planning board and by the council under Mayor Lizette Parker at that time as a result. That is a model for any future development. Meet with the community, see what they want, add that in. When it came to the 1500 Teaneck Road, the DPW on Teaneck Road that we own, that is why we offer to the town a age-restricted, income-restricted senior housing. Because we own the land, we can control what goes on there. If the community says, we don't want that there, and they may say it's because 5 counties of people get to live there, only 3 Teaneck residents are going to live there, I, who live on Westerville, don't want it because it won't benefit my neighborhood, that's fine. I believe that's what the neighborhood wants. The council, which controls that development, won't approve it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think we should approve that age restricted, but if the community doesn't want that, we can control that. We do not have to do that. But what we did do, and we've discussed in the council meetings, is the first floor commercial space. One thing that was mentioned was making that a drop-in senior center for seniors that can't get to this building. We can control that. We can put it there because we own that site.
Yeah, I think that we're in the midst of a time now where every town, up and down Teaneck Road and up and down Bergen County, is putting housing developments in the town. Nobody likes it, but it's a way of kind of managing the uprise in Texas. The fact that a lot of them on Teaneck Road near State Street, it just happened that those properties became available for those purposes. There's no grand plans to overstack State Street. It just happened that those 6 projects happened at the same time, and what we have to be concerned about is the neighborhood impact. We gotta make sure that Teaneck Road from Route 4 to Newbridge Road has monitored red lights so people can come out of the side streets and get on Teaneck Road. We gotta make sure that the crossings, the people crossing is monitored in a way that people can cross Teaneck Road. We gotta make sure that in the zone, that's the area I mentioned before, that every sidewalk platform is square and people are not tripping over the sidewalks. We gotta make sure that the street lights are in those areas. We have to make sure people can walk and talk and get around so that there's work that should be done now. We don't have to wait for development. The light on Teaneck Road and Tryon Avenue, the light on State Street, and the light on West Inglewood Avenue should relate to each other so people can move during a period when traffic is not moving. We have to do that right now. We don't have to wait for development. We have to make sure that those kinds of movement things are taken care of with or without development immediately.
I just have to go back one because I didn't feel like a question was answered, and I have this concern. The CSX trains, now they're carrying crude oil, coal? Have the people that are moving into these apartments been made aware that they, are living next to a train, and if there's an accident, they're the first ones that are going to be in serious trouble? And in terms of safety, even medical, are we equipped right now to respond to something like that? In terms of the ambulance, can we respond to a train accident carrying coal or crude oil or other contaminants? Yeah, a mass casualty accident. Are we prepared for that? So I have that question. Alan's had his hand up for a while, so I'll let him go, but please think about that.
I really started becoming aware of this when I was driving to my Yeshiva High School, located at the north end of Palisade Avenue, and I would see oil trains, tankers, sitting on the side of the tracks. And I saw that a sign, a red diamond with the number 1267. And I sat down with my phone and I looked it up, and those are unit trains. They could be 100, 120 tanker filled with crude oil. My note is at the end of Palisade Avenue. The only exit, the only egress is along Palisade Avenue. It's not the only school that's impacted. TABC Yeshiva, TID, you have Benjamin Franklin Middle School, you go down to the charter school at the other end. So much of our infrastructure right next to the tracks. A derailment right next to TVAC, a derailment right next to Fire Station 4, they are right on top of the tracks. Our Rhoda Center is pretty much just a couple hundred feet where we are right now from the tracks. This is our main emergency center. We need to be prepared, we need to be taking care of that, we need to ensure that developments that are located next to those tracks are appropriately secured. I am definitely and absolutely concerned about the Avalon Bay building. A wooden stick kindling wood construction that is located right directly next to the tracks, that is going to be filled 24/7, largely with, in many cases, with older people who are not able to get out. Now, is the Teaneck Fire Department trained for this? Absolutely, and I don't think you could ask for better. It is one of the tremendous benefits of having a paid fire department. They're not just available for calls, they are there to be trained, and I constantly hear not only about having a phone truck and having a phone truck that covers a lot of this area, the coordination with other municipalities, the training around the country out in Colorado. You're paying for that, but you're getting tremendous value for that. Are we prepared? Yes. But we're prepared, and we have a fire department that is prepared for a very, very, very real risk of a fire, of very, very flammable, more flammable than regular crude oil that is the Bakken crude. And I think we need to be prepared for that. One of the things that I've recommended is having cameras monitoring, because we need to be assured not only that we are protected from those trains, but one of the concerns that I have is, are those trains protected from us? Anybody can walk up to a train, and whether it's to put up a penny on the tracks and have the train go over it, or worse, those trains are largely unprotected. And again, is it a concern? Is it going to happen? I don't know. I hope, God forbid, it never happens. We are prepared, but it is a very, very, very real risk that we need to be dealing with.
Well, yeah. Yeah, so I will echo what Mr. Sohn said. The reality of the train being there is that the train is there, and the train is going to carry this stuff come through, and we train on this stuff constantly, and it's not just the crude oil stuff. There are a lot of hazardous things that run on that train, but if the worst case scenario happens, it really doesn't matter where it happens. I was at a FEMA training. One of the nice things about being in Teaneck is our proximity to New York City gives us access to a lot of FEMA money. So this is national money that your fire department spends going on training. So I'd say it sort of moves around a little bit, but 30 to 40% of our membership has been to crude oil specific training in Texas, and it's wonderful training, and we do what we can to be prepared for that what if. One of the things that I was able to do is we went to a tabletop exercise, and we said, okay, well, let's say that one of the rail lines that goes through Jersey City with the same kind of stuff on it rolled over, and they have similar population density around the rail lines. And it's a big problem. And what I consistently say when it comes to this is we are as prepared as we can be. This is a very high hazard, thank goodness, low likelihood problem. And it's not the only problem on our desk, but we are as prepared. One of the nice things that Teaneck has, we have 3,500 gallons of foam concentrate. So what that means is that when we attack a fire that's a flaming liquid fire, we have to use foam, right? So we mix it. I call it dish detergent. It's not really it's much more expensive than dish detergent, but we mix the dish detergent with the water and we stir it up, and it makes a foam blanket on the top. And the idea is to suppress the vapors. And so I'll just relate an interesting story about it. Having that foam available, right? When I was first at my training in Texas, Elizabeth, Elizabeth, New Jersey, which has its own issues and the need for foam, they used their foam on an event, and they had pictures of it. And what happened was they were on Route 1 and 9, and there was a fully loaded gasoline tanker truck, and it was driving to make a delivery. And there was a person in a car, and they were late, and it was late at night, 2 a.m., and they were running red lights along 1 and 9. I don't know if you know 1 and 9 in Elizabeth, but closely spaced wood frame housing right on both sides of 1 and 9. So here's a fully loaded gasoline tanker, I think 3,000 gallons of gasoline, which is itself fairly volatile. And this vehicle drives underneath of it and snaps, first of all, traps itself underneath, snaps off all the valves underneath that fuel truck. So now, fuel is raining down on top of this car, right? And then the inevitable happened. The hot spot in the car was found, the fuel lit off, and now the tanker itself was cooking. So what did Elizabeth do? They went out there with their foam, and they put the fire out, and the pictures were kind of interesting. They put a 6-inch foam blanket on, an area certainly the size of this parking lot out here. And the point I'm trying to make, so it did not have a happy ending for the person who drove underneath the fuel tanker truck. But the reality is, having that foam access and that training, it allows us the added benefit of having people who are trained for it and the product that we need to use in case something like that, God forbid, happens in Teaneck. So it's not only about the rail lines, because I agree with Mr. Song. I really hope I go the rest of my career and we never have a problem with the rail line of any sort, type, or form. If it happens, we'll address it, but we also have the ability to deal with it on the highway. So that's an added benefit maybe of having that foam capability in that training. I'm not sure I addressed your concerns. If it happens, it doesn't matter if it's next to a big building or a little building, it's a problem. If it happens next to the schools, it's a problem. Really, our evacuation plan is going to be a problem. If the worst case scenario happens, we're all going to know about it, right? I used to work for a guy, and he said, if that happens, fix your hair, because you're definitely going to be on TV. And I don't mean to be tongue-in-cheek about it, but it's not going to be a secret though.
So from the ambulance corps perspective, one can only hope that it doesn't affect our building. All of our resources are obviously in our building. We have only one station. All 5 ambulances, unless out on a call or at a hospital or service, are located in that building. Other than that, we've trained for mass casualty incidents and have attended also drills, and we hope it maintains that way, and it's just drills.
Thank you, John.
Okay, the next questions, I have about 4 of them, and they are all on impact studies for the development in the Northeast. How is that impacting us? Do we have currently the infrastructure to support an increase of 1,000, 2,000 people within a year? Do we have the infrastructure to support that? I asked this question online, and someone said that we have more than enough infrastructure, that it was built more than enough. I kind of find that hard to believe, but I would like to hear from all of you. First, also, please tell everyone here, I've heard it at the council meeting, but when we expect the impact study that was ordered, when do we expect that? How can we all see it, etc. And who would like to take that?
All right, we called for the impact study, and I believe Mr. Price and someone from the traffic department is going to do it. I want to see it as much as everybody else, but as soon as we get it, you'll see it. And I hope that it's not a study with no recommendations. But my hope is that it's a study to say, okay, here's a problem, here's what we need to do about it. And I can't wait.
Talking a month, 2 months, 6 months before it comes out?
No, sorry, we're not doing that. You have to write your questions down. Does anyone else want to address this?
Oh boy, again, an impact study is obviously necessary. The question is, why are we doing an impact study after we're doing the development? figuring out how much we can accommodate, and then making a decision how much we should accommodate. I can fit 23 people into my house, should I have 23 people living there? Maybe that's too many. We should be looking at ensuring that we have the capacity. I appreciate that Mr. Price is serving as multiple hats. He is the planner for the Township Council, he is the planner for the Planning Board, he is the planner for the Board of Adjustment. But if we're going out, if you have a medical issue and you're getting a second opinion, there is a reason why you go to a different doctor to get that second opinion. Whether it's confirmation bias of that first physician, whether it's having a different set of eyes. And it is incredibly invaluable to find out what's going on. The question earlier about the impact on the Northeast, for whatever the reasons are, there are a lot of projects that are outside the Northeast. For example, my neighbors across the street will have 2 affordable housing units in their backyard. If Haluba, which is on 6.75 acres, zoned at 12 units per acre, would have about 10 to 12 affordable housing units. It is in the Northeast, along that State Street corridor, where there are going to be potentially hundreds of affordable housing units. All those people, hundreds of units with large numbers of affordable housing units. All those units are going to have an impact. There is a lot of infrastructure that does exist there, but the question is, how will the quality of life? Anyone who's driving on that little stretch of Amsterdam, which runs 2 blocks from Teaneck Road to Palisade Avenue, knows that all the housing that's being developed, whether it's 1500 Teaneck Road, 1475 Palisade Avenue, the schools that have gone up, impact the ability of people to drive across that 2-lane street. How will our buses be impacted? There are already significant overcrowding on our buses. A plug for Senator Weinberg's District 37 Commuters Forum. We don't have enough capacity there. We should be looking beforehand and evaluating what the capacity is and using that information to create a master plan that says this is how much should be here and this is how it should be spread across the country.
Okay, this question is in regards to the Board of Adjustment, approval or denial of 100 State Street and its impact on future development.
That's still in litigation, and we can't talk about it because we don't know what the conclusion is going to be. But there is a meeting in June. What's the date, Mark?
It's not set, 5th or the 16th.
6 or the 20th.
That's still in the discussion stage. We don't know what the outcome is going to be.
What's going on at FDU that requires the erection of a huge construction crane on River Road parking lot? What infrastructure changes are going on that be required to accommodate new development impact studies northeast?
I'll leave the FDU part.
Yeah, at FDU, they have a walking bridge that connects the Hackensack campus to the Teaneck campus. It's a couple hundred, well, it's basically mid-campus. So, and the old walking bridge is in some disrepair. So they are replacing the old walking bridge with a new walking bridge. Yeah. So I'm not sure why they have to have such a big currency.
It's one piece of steel, so that's what.
No mention of traffic has been addressed that will be a problem on Windsor, Teaneck Road. No mention of lack of diversity in sections of Teaneck, a lack of diversity on Cedar Lane, a lack of diversity on Queen Anne Road business area.
Question.
Obviously, this person thinks that there's a lack of diversity in these areas.
For the businesses or the house? Sorry.
No, it's the business district.
So I
both
think
Cedar Lane and Plaza, it would seem to me.
there are plenty of vacancies. Open up. That's if the question is why is it lack of diversity, that's the first time we've actually heard that question. There's about 5 or 7 vacancies on Cedar Lane. Any store is welcome. Queen Anne Road has several vacancies, or I think 1 vacancy. So if there's somebody interested, we'd love to have any store there.
Also, about the lack of mention of traffic, impact of the traffic.
That was addressed.
That's part of it. That's what you're asking about. Let me talk about this. One of the discussions we had at some length around 1500 Teaneck Road is about the lack of retail. You know, retail is not the answer to everything. If you walk up and down Palisade Avenue in Inglewood, they have a retail problem. You go up in town, any of these towns, retail is not the answer to everything. The question is whether we can keep it viable enough for people to want to come here and run their businesses. There's a Crispy Crust store that just opened up last week down by the fire station. You got to try it out, brand new. There are businesses being built on Teaneck Road in a mini mall across the street from Popeyes. There's a lot of activity going on in town, and we want you to come out and support those businesses so they can stay here. And if you know somebody who wants to come to Teaneck, let's come and have them talk to the community, what is it called? Chamber of Commerce, and we'll try and find them a spot.
Raise your hand, Larry.
I think it's the Golden Crest.
So we'll expect this study for another 4 weeks? Excuse me?
I don't know the answer.
Oh, no, okay. No, everyone's really interested to see that. Okay, I have a question here, it's neither the planning board nor the Board of Adjustment are elected positions. How can one believe that they would be responsive to the citizens here in Teaneck? It says there are no consequences to their actions with respect to the voters. Please comment. How can we ensure that the Board of Adjustment is recognizing or really working for the people and holding our interest at hand? I don't have his hand up first. We'll go to you next.
As a member for 4 years of the Township Council, I had an opportunity to interview every single person who went through, together with my council colleagues, every single individual who was considered as a prospective member for our land use boards, either our planning board and our Board of Adjustment. And I asked one question. There was one question I asked every single time. What works in Teaneck in terms of development? What doesn't work? What changes would you want to see? And I heard some interesting responses. But I've also heard, and again, I voted for many of those, and it's very, very important to me, that we have diversity on our land use boards. And I don't just mean in terms of race, in terms of background, in terms of where they live in geography, in terms of experience, in terms of education. I want to have 7, 9 people who have open minds and understand the impacts of the decisions they make. As I discussed, the master plan says that we need to develop by understanding that all progress, all growth is not good, all development is not bad. And again, it requires people who are up there who are not just there to rubber stamp projects, but who have the wisdom to distinguish between those projects which genuinely move us forward and those that don't. And I think it is critical that our land use boards are not just rubber stamps, that they're not just cronyism, but that they are genuinely representative of different viewpoints of how we should be moving forward in our township.
Let me help you. You know, the zoning board and the Board of Adjustment, the 2 most important boards in terms of development here. What we need is for people who are interested in being on those boards to come forward and fill out the application and be available when a vacancy occurs. We also need really careful consideration as to who we pick. But we have to have people to pick from. So the ball is in your court. If you want to be on the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board, apply for it, so we have someone to debate over, rather than a vacancy comes along and somebody knows somebody who wants to be on it. That's not the way to go. We have to have qualified people who are in the wings, who are waiting for those two boards, and they're much more important now with development than they were before.
I have an excellent line that was said in the 70s, and I'm going to hold that line for the next council meeting, and I'll read it at that point. I'm going to ask this question. Raise your hand if you put an application in to join the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board. Raise your hand if you're on the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board. Mr. Hill, when we interviewed, when did you put your application in?
Like 2015, 16, and I applied because I read something in the Suburbanite. But then the response that I got, that there was no position available at the time.
Excellent. Ms. Belcher, when did you interview?
In 2017.
And you're on the board now? Mr. Platsky?
2014 to 15.
And are you on the board? Even though I believe you're actually a planner, correct? Yeah. Mr. Rose, you, how long have you been on the board for?
15 years, I don't know.
Okay, so we have about 4 or 5 applications in the room. Please put in your applications. There's a lot of great boards to join. You just saw just the people we just spoke right now, diverse, living in different parts of town and whatnot. Please put your applications in.
So are you saying we apply?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Stand, since everyone else is standing. Again, remember, I have not been on the council at any point, but I have participated as a community member on 1500 Teaneck Road when it was first proposed, and the more these projects come on, I've gotten deeper and deeper into the process. I had to put in an Oprah request for the traffic impact study for 100 State Street. I was able to pull traffic impact studies from all over the state of New Jersey and compare them, not being a resident of any of those other towns. I only one person, maybe larger than should be, but only one person. I was able to pull traffic impact studies and documents relating to other developments in other towns that I cannot do here. Having done that, I'm a little concerned sitting through some of these planning board meetings and some of these board of adjustment meetings with some of the questions that are either being asked or not being asked. The documents that are being put forth, I can honestly say, are not the most deficient I've seen. I think that badge goes to Dunn-L in New Jersey. I think they have 0 standards, but at this point, I'm under the impression that Teaneck is far from the best and that we could do better. So I agree with Alan. I would like to see more diversity of background. And Dr. Pruitt, didn't you put forth someone this year that I believe they said no questions were asked of them when they went in? Did you not put forth a name this year for the board?
We talked to people and they answered and asked questions. Yeah, there were people.
Okay, so yes, please go out, put in your applications if you are interested, because as a resident, as a layperson, just probing into this myself, I'm a little, more than a little concerned about the process here and how it goes, and more so the questions that are not being asked than the questions that are being asked.
You know, every project is required to do a traffic study. And what I've been trying to do is to get the traffic study for a zone done. Now, those 6 projects on State Street, there's been no study of the total picture. Now, we've asked for that, and that's what I think Teresa's talking about. We have, when they decide on a building, they say there's a traffic study, but there's been no study of the whole region, and there needs to be a study of the whole area.
Well, I agree with you, there needs to be a study of the whole area, but no, I was not speaking specifically of the whole area. I was speaking specifically about 100 State Street.
Okay, we have to wrap up. There was one question I wanted to pose, but it might be longer than a 1-minute answer. This has been a wonderful experience. I think we need another one soon, like maybe in the summer. Before I volunteer anyone else, I would be very willing to do this again with all of you, because we couldn't get to every single question. I think maybe people would like to speak up, but I thank you all for coming. I did have one last question. If Mark, maybe you can answer in 1 minute. The question is, how did we decide to use Mr. Price for all of our impact studies? And can we change that?
His employment predates me. I mean, he's been a planner here. I'm not sure I can answer him. Mr. Price was a planner before I was on the planning board. He's actually recognized as one of the top planners in the state. I do know that for the 2007 master plan, we switched companies to another company that's since been out of business, and it didn't work out that well. I don't know why Mr. Price wasn't chosen for that. That was well above my area back then, but I'm a big fan of Mr. Price. Mr. Price would be able to answer this question in about 45 minutes to my 45 seconds. So I really can't answer it, but I look forward to the impact study, and what I'll do, Cheryl, is in the next week or two, he's in Italy right now, but when he gets back, we'll reach out, see what the estimated time to receive it is, and you can forward it to the group.
I would like to thank all our panelists for coming out tonight.
Thank you. I want to thank our panelists. Please, a hand for our panelists. Thank you for spending the evening with us. I would love to thank our moderators. I'd love to recognize Senator Weinberg, who's always supporting residents of Teaneck and looking out for what's most important for us. Again, a shout out to the Action Subcommittee and those on the Public Relations Committee who put this event together. Thank you.
June 12th, in this room, will be our transportation forum. We will have people from the Port Authority and from New Jersey Transit here. Give you the plans on the new bus terminal.
Say it again.
We're June 12th, 7 o'clock in this same room. And as I said, people from the Port Authority and from NJ Transit will be here.
Thank you.
Two more things.
Okay.
Shout out to Gina Gersberg, who spent her birthday here with us tonight. And I want to thank Allison and Chuck for video recording this evening. Thank you. And I would love to thank all of you for coming out. Because we need to continue to stay involved, fill out those applications, join those advisory boards, come to a TDMC meeting, go to town council meetings, go to the Board of Ed meetings, and please do not forget to sign the attendance sheet. Thank you for coming out this evening. Get home safe.